introduce our facilitators. Whilst you ensure that your classmates are all in the class. By 5:05, I will come back, read the profile of our facilitators, and then we can get started. All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Once again, we will start speaking on the topic strategic political communication. And I'll be reading her profile so that we can kickstart. Petra Akinti-Oyebule is a strategic communications, public affairs, and government relations professional with government, politics, advocacy section of communication, leadership, governance, stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, and institutional strategy. She currently serves as the head of government strategic partnerships at public institutions and other strategic supports investment mobilization and business growth initiatives. Petra has extensive experience in government, and she served as senior special assistant. Education gave her practical experience in media engagement, public
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. So I'll just continue reading the bio. Permit me to start all over again. I guess the network was breaking earlier. Please confirm if you can hear me by signaling and dropping an emoji or dropping a message in chat box. All right, thank you very much. All right, so Petra Akito is a strategic communication and public affairs and government-related professional with over 20 years experience spanning the private sector, government, politics, advocacy, and developmental communications. Her career sits at the intersection of communication, leadership, governance, stakeholders engagement, and institutional strategy. She currently serves as the head of Government Strategic Partnership at Credence Group, where she leads engagements with governments, public institutions, and other strategic stakeholders, develops institutional partnership and supports investment mobilization and business growth initiatives. Petra has extensive experience in government and political communication. She serves as the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor of Kogi State earlier as Senior Special Assistant on Electronic Media. Working at the Center of Government Communication gave her practical experience in media management, public perception, policy communication, reputation management, and crisis communication, as well as understanding of how political leadership, public opinion, and media narrative interact. Her career also spans corporate communication, public affairs, advocacy, branding, stakeholders relation, and reputation management. Before assuming her current role, she serves as the Group Head, Corporate Communications and Branding at Credence Group, where she provides strategic directions for the group's corporate positioning, reputation, and communication across its portfolios of businesses. Petra is currently undertaking a doctoral studies in leadership and strategic studies at the Nigerian Defense Academy. She holds an MPhil in leadership and strategic studies and a master's degree in international affairs and strategic studies, both from the Nigerian Defense Academy, as well as a bachelor's degree of science, bachelor's of science degree in sociology from Kogi State University. She's also pursuing an MBA in finance and investment at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. An alumna of the senior management program of the Lagos Business School, she is a federal government accredited management trainer, having completed both the basic and advanced management development programs. She is also an associate of the Advertising Regulatory Council of Nigeria. Over the course of her career, she has participated in numerous local and international professional training programs, further strengthening her competency across strategic communication, leadership, and also public affairs, governance, management, and related areas. This combines with more than 2 decades of practical experience, having shaped a multidisciplinary approach that connects communication strategy with leadership, institutional objective, and real-world decision-making. Beyond her professional career, she is actively involved in civic, community, and developmental initiative. She serves as a vice president of Uguri Descendants Union and the umbrella body of the Uguri people, and also leads its communication functions. In these capacities, she contributes to community development, cultural advocacy, strategic communication, mobilization, an initiative aimed at preserving the Ogori's heritage while advancing its long-term development. She is also an executive director at the Tinin Beats Art Initiative, a non-profit initiative focused on advocacy and support of premature babies and their families, with particular interest in strengthening awareness and support for neonatal care. A writer, a public speaker, facilitator on governance and public affairs. She is a professional and professionally and academic interested in strategic and political communication, crisis and reputation management, leadership, governance, public policy, government relations, stakeholders management, and strategic partnership. Drawing on more than 2 decades of experience across government, politics, and private sector, she brings a distinctively practical-led perspective to political communication, practically the relationship between power, perception, narrative, crisis management, and public trust. I want us to appreciate our speaker this evening as she comes up for our session. Thank you so much, Ma. Can we show our excitement? Right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Yes, we can see you.
Yes, and thank you for the warm welcome. I can see all the clap emojis. Thank you very much. I thought the profile reading was never going to end. Okay, so it's another exciting evening, and I'm really excited to be here to discuss one of my favorite topics or one of my favorite areas of specialization. And today we are going to be looking at strategic political communication from the lens of power perception and crisis management. Of course, as always, we are going to make it very interactive. I hope that you take your notes and you have questions for me and some feedback I can learn from, as well as some practicable case studies. Of course, Nigeria is a classroom by itself. So let's get started. Who's sharing my slides, please?
Good evening, ma'am. The slides will come up shortly.
Thank you. So like I said, we're going to be looking at power perception, crisis management. What happens when you are thrown into crisis? Of course, nobody prepares for crisis. Sometimes we anticipate crisis, but the nature and form isn't what we quite anticipate. And so when they come, they throw us off balance. How well do you prepare for it in a way that doesn't damage perception or create trust issues that impacts on your legitimacy as an executive, especially in the political space? I have 19 slides here that will guide our conversation. And again, I do hope that at the end of this session, we will be able to learn from one another and have questions that we can, have questions that I particularly can learn from. Just a minute while Feromi shares the slides. She's sharing her screen. He or she is sharing her or his screen. His or her screen. It looks like the network at the Electoral College is particularly slow today. Moderator, would you like me to share the screen from my end instead?
Would that be convenient, ma'am, or would you give us a few minutes to bring it up?
Okay, if you can do that in a few minutes, why not?
All right. Apologies for the delay.
As always, you know this class is not going to be about press releases and public statements. Okay, there we have it. Confirm you can see the screen at your end. I can see it from here. Please confirm so that.
Yes,
Good.
we can, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So the first slide is just the introduction. It is the topic we have here. And I have said before, it's power perception and crisis management. And my name is Petra Akinti Onyebule. I'm very privileged and honored to be here tonight. Slide 2, please. Okay, so, and my central proposition for today's facilitation is that politics is not a contest of policies. Instead, it is a contest of meaning. And what do I mean by that? As much as policies, manifestos are crucial to campaigns, to politics, and to governance process, it is not enough. It has to be that the people for whom these policies are designed actually understand what the policies are meant to, establish and to achieve. Therefore, people respond to what they understand, what they feel, what they trust, and what they believe is possible. So regardless of how beautiful a policy is, the people must fundamentally understand what it is, how it makes them feel, what trust level it evokes in them, what they believe is possible, and how they respond to all of this put together. Strategic communication as a discipline is what helps to align political objectives to public expectations and communication choices. So we have the policies contained in the manifesto, and then we have the objectives of the political party or political individual, then what the public expectations are, the communication choices. Everything put together is what strategic communication helps to align. And on the next slide that is showing on your screen, we see the difference. I wish this were a physical class. We see the difference between, very straight to the point difference between what publicity is versus what strategic communication is. Essentially, publicity is, to make something public, to make it known to as many people as possible. It simply asks, what should we tell people? Whereas strategic communication asks, what outcome? Yes, what do we tell people? But then what outcome are we trying to achieve? What exactly do we want to get from this thing we want to tell the people? Who are the people we want to communicate this to? And what communication intervention will help us achieve that purpose that we want to achieve? So strategic communication doesn't just look at, let's push this out. It looks at all the variables that will make whatever we are pushing out resonate with the people, help them to understand better, and give the feedback, whether positive or negative, that we envisage. Next slide, please. And here we'll be talking about the battle space. The battle space is looking at all the actors, the stakeholders that are necessary for a political communication to take place, which is the political communication ecosystem. We have the political actors, that's the government itself, parties, political parties, be it APC, ADC, SDP, NDC, Labour Party, PRP, whatever the party is, the candidates themselves, the opposition that are not necessarily candidates, but they are parties and they oppose the government of the day, institutions, whether government institutions, civil society organization, and then we have the other interest groups. We have intermediaries that are supposed to be arbiters, that are supposed to be neutral, and that are supposed to be objective. Journalists, creators, creative creators, community leaders, experts in different fields, clerics, Muslims, Christians, perhaps traditional religious practitioners, activists, and influencers. They are supposed to be on the fence, and they are supposed to be the intermediaries between the political actors and the public. Sometimes they are not. There are some people in this circle, the people in the middle, that are not necessarily objective, but they serve as intermediaries as well. The publics, that's voters, and they are not just one audience. They have interests, they have identities, they have anxieties, they have idiosyncrasies, and they have information habits that differ. So it's a whole plethora of people and their interests that make up the publics. Next, please. Now, in communication, When we hear power, we usually just think about, power derived from the politics and government. But power is partly the power to define the issue. If you have power and you're unable to define the issue, then there is a problem. That means you're powerless. Now, let's look at the basis of power, the different bases of power. Who gets to say what the problem is? That person has the power. Whose explanation becomes the default explanation? Like in some governments, we have different spokespersons that are supposed to handle different bits of communication. Now, there is usually a central spokesperson who is supposed to speak to issues and whose opinions and whose explanations are taken as the voice of the government. Who is that person that has it? Which facts are repeated, amplified, or ignored? And what language becomes the language everyone else is forced to use, everyone else must use when they are talking about power? So when all these answers, whatever answers you get to these questions, defines how power interplays when communication and narrative messaging is talked about. And from power, we move to perception. Perception is politically consequential, right? Perception derives itself from, perception derives itself from reality. What actually happened? What do people think happened and why? So there is the reality, there is the interpretation. And what is the consequence? Don't forget, we have said that perception is politically consequential, because it's one thing to give reality, it's another thing for people to interpret that reality as something else. And whatever the public interprets the reality to be would define what consequences would the politics would be impacted by. What do they believe? What do they feel? What do they share? What do they support? Or what do they oppose? For instance, who is the person that decides what we are arguing about? Sorry. For instance, when there is a policy statement, government says this is what has happened. People interpret it as this is what we think happened. And for this reason, this is what we think has happened. We are either going to believe it or oppose it, or we are going to, based on whether we believe or we oppose, we are going to demonstrate, we are going to comply, or however. While perception is very, very critical and important, perception is not enough to govern. You cannot govern successfully. At the same time, you cannot govern successfully while ignoring perception. So both of them have to go hand in hand. And a communication gap can turn a policy problem into a legitimacy problem. Communication gap is what happens when reality and perception do not match. Now we talk about strategy. Please, can you go to the next slide? Then when I'm done with that, we come back to the next slide. I think that's narrative. Power perception. We should go to narrative before coming to strategy. Sorry, please. Okay. The narrative. Usually, a narrative is more than a slogan or a phrase. It's more than a catchphrase or a buzzword. Message is what you say today. A narrative is the larger story into which today's message fits. For example, it could be a narrative that we want premature and small babies to have a higher chance at survival. The message today is that we need to buy more incubators. As much as it is a call to action, it is also a message. So that message has to sit in the larger narrative, which must be not just formed today, but must have precedence. Strong narratives explain the past. they interpret the present, and they offer a believable future. So we want to save as many premature babies and small babies as possible. We want to give them higher chance at survival. Therefore, we must educate pregnant women on risk factors. That's today. And then we must buy incubators. We must ensure that we have medical personnel that are experienced and that they have the expertise to ensure that these babies get the basic things that they need, the basic care that is required. And then the future, the believable future is that once all these are put together, the parents putting in their own bits, government doing its bits, doctors doing its bits, caregivers doing their bits, and family and support systems also chipping in, that the future is, in future, we are going to have less number of babies dying from being born preterm. So that's the believable future. Message discipline does not mean robotic repetition. It just means strategic consistency. The fact that you want your message to be disciplined and devoid of any trace of partisanship or being overly colorful, it does not mean that you continue to repeat it. It just means that the central message, the central information is strategic, and that strategy is consistent. Please, let's go to the previous slide. Now, strategy from objective to message. Usually, sometimes before you coin anything, before you frame any message, before you put a narrative together, you must first ask yourself, what is the objective? What is the objective? What political or governance outcome must communication support? Don't just put out a statement because a statement needs to be put out. What exactly do you want to get from it? The other one would be audience. Whose behavior, belief, or understanding matters? Who are the stakeholders? Who do you actually want this message to go out to? Insights. These people that you want to communicate with, what do they already believe? What's their bias? What's their fear? What is their want? And what do they misunderstand? Then we move next to the message itself. What is the simplest credible proposition? One that is simple enough to get the message you want out in the best possible way and gives you the best possible outcome. Then the messenger, who has the standing to say it. Would it be a government spokesperson? Would it be a cleric? Would it be a well-respected activist? Would it be a lawyer? Would it be an academic? Who should we send? Should we send the executive director of Electoral College? Would people listen to him more? Would they be less skeptical of him when he passes this message across? Then the last one there in that chain is the channel and timing. What channel are we going to use? There are some TV stations or radio stations that already carry a toga of bias. Either they are pro-government or they are anti-government. We need a neutral one that is seemingly neutral and objective. So which one do we want to use? Or do we want to use the one that is anti-government, so that if this thing is coming from this particular station that is seen to be always opposed to government, then perhaps people will believe that it is credible. And what timing? So we have the where, when, and in what format it will land. Next, please. Slide 9. So now we cannot talk about power perception, the narrative strategy, without talking about governance itself. And when we are talking about governance, of course, we are talking about governance when it comes to communication. And we are talking about how to communicate difficult policies, because what I always say that some of the people who have the most difficult jobs within government is spokespersons, people who have to explain. It's easy to explain when everything is hunky-dory. But you see, when a policy is really difficult, that even you find it, you know that it's going to be hard to sell, then that's when you know that communication is no piece of cake. To communicate a difficult policy, what you have to do is first explain why, the why. There is a problem. What is that problem that is being solved? And why now? For example, fuel subsidy. It was a problem. We want to solve it. Why do you have to do it now? Why communicate the decision on May 29th just when you are being sworn in? Why not wait till later? So communicating it, you have to explain the why. You must name the cost. Don't communicate as though people cannot or will not feel hardship. Don't communicate as though it's just going to happen magically. There is going to be a cost to this policy. It's not going to be tea party. We anticipate that X number of people might lose their jobs, X number of businesses might suffer for the foreseeable future, give a timeline, and then show the path. What happens next? What milestones should citizens expect? Have a short-term, medium-term, and long-term process. These are the things we are going to feel within the first 6 months. In the next 1 to 2 years, these are what we expect to happen. And then between 3 and 4 years of this policy being activated or executed, these are the things that we expect to follow. Then prove progress. Periodically use evidence, delivery, and credible third-party validation to show that that policy is actually the good policy, it was actually the right policy to take at that time. And then you have to localize these policies. All economic experts, for instance, in the world have said that Nigeria's macro policies are working. And then you hear the question over and over again, how does it put food on our table? Yes, Forex is stable. Yes, the economy is stable. The other day, it was Dr. Konjo Iweala who is saying that we have to address the macro before going to the microeconomics. But people are more interested in the micro. So how does this translate into household, business, and community meaning? How does it put food on our table? How do our people in the villages, how do they stop asking us for money all the time? How does black tax reduce as a result of this progress that we are talking about? Then listen, feedback is also intelligence, not an inconvenience. Unfortunately, most times in government around our client, feedback is seen as inconvenience. However, unpalatable feedback is feedback. So it should be seen as information, intelligence gathering. As a matter of fact, spokespeople should have like their own people that are in the field trying to gather feedback, not the sweet feedback, both negative and positive. And then the negative, of course, it should be used to feed into governance for those actors to better the lives of citizens, while, of course, the positive ones are used to validate the policy. So we are now where I like the most, crisis management. I like it the most because when there is crisis, that is when a good communications manager can shine very well. But when does an issue become a crisis? If this was a physical class, I would have loved to pause. Maybe I can still do that and give like 5 minutes for people to speak. When does an issue become a crisis? I know it's right there on the screen, but just explain it in a way that brings it back home. The first person wants to go.
All right. If you want to answer that question, you can just simply raise your hand. Call 20. I believe that. All right. I see Tunde. Tunde, you have been unmuted.
Sorry, yeah, can you hear me properly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think an issue becomes a crisis when there's no control of the problem and you can't, I think it's like risk management and it's very difficult to mitigate against it. Also, it becomes like a threat. So there could be losses which could also come into play. And And also, you have to think about the bigger picture. That means basically it's more or less, it's kind of almost gotten out of hand. Because if it's a risk and it's maybe on a risk register, at least you might be able to mitigate against it. But when it becomes an issue, then it's very big. So I'll give a very quick example. I was involved in rehousing like refugees from Afghanistan and co. But one of the issues, there was a difference between issue and crisis. It could become an issue when you don't have houses to house them. And then you have more people, but you don't have basically you have people, but there are no houses. So that could be more or less like an issue. I don't know if that's if that's kind of correct.
It works. Thank you very much. I didn't get the name.
Tunde Akinfolaji.
Thank you, Tunde. Thank you very much. Do we have any other contribution, please? Okay, so I guess I can go on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So in the political space, right? Politicians tend to they tend to be extremists when it comes to crisis management. They either don't think it's important, or they think every negative criticism is tending towards crisis. However, there is an example that comes to my mind: NSAS. NSAS could have been mitigated because it was not something that NSAS, the crisis did not just happen. It was a mismanaged situation that imploded. For years, people had been complaining about police brutality, SARS brutality against a certain segment of society, a certain demography, and a certain part of a certain demography. Yet government did nothing about it. It was tone deaf. It seemed like the complaints were not even reaching the authorities. And at some point, it simply just went out of hand. So that became a crisis. That was one crisis that should never have happened. It happened because there was no stakeholder management. There was no sense of listening from government. It didn't appear that government was serious, or it didn't appear that government thought that citizens were serious about their complaints. And so it became a crisis. And of course, it threatened the trust, legitimacy, safety operations of government. At some point, NSAS became Buhari must go. At some point, public facilities were touched by fire. At some point, public officials in uniforms were killed. At some point, there were demonstrations that shut down the economy of some states. So yes, it became a huge crisis. Another time when an issue can become a crisis is when information vacuum is being filled faster than verified information can catch up. A horse vacuum, something must fill it. And in today's day and age, information, stories, insinuations, implied analysis all tend to wear the garb of verified information, and then official communication can no longer catch up. And when they do catch up, they cannot stem the damage that has been made. Another very crucial point to note is when multiple stakeholders are demanding answers at once. I like to say that sometimes some of the schemes, while not speaking for them, some of the financial schemes, investment schemes that have been termed Ponzi did not originally start out as Ponzi schemes. They started out as legit schemes, and then at some point, they took more investment than they had the capacity to govern. Eventually, multiple stakeholders began to demand to withdraw at once. No matter how big a financial institution is, once the critical stakeholders all queue up and say, we want our money, there is bound to be crisis. Now, when it comes to governance, when people, multiple stakeholders are asking the same question and all of them are speaking in the same or similar tone all at once, it becomes a crisis because you do not know who to respond to and when to, at least if it is one after the other, then you can have engagements with them. But when it is at once, like labor union is shutting down and UPeng is shutting down, therefore there is no fuel, what do they call them? NEPA or whatever, distribution companies going on strike. All of them, I don't think distribution companies go on strike anymore, but when it was NEPA and PHCN, they used to. Medical doctors going on, all stakeholders, all demanding answers at once, then there is a crisis. And then when a bad response can become more damaging than an original event. We have a plethora of examples for this one. Somebody says something wrong and then the response becomes even worse. There are so many times that it is a government's response to a criticism or to a narrative that actually draws citizens' attention to the something somewhere. And then government comes with their sledgehammer to just strike the ants, and everybody goes, hey, what's going on there? And then you have a crisis on your hand. Now to the next, please. Yeah. Now, the first rule of crisis communication. That's the first rule of crisis communication on the screen. Do not let panic become the strategy. And this is because whenever there is a political crisis, the first casualty is often internal discipline. Everybody starts calling everybody. You don't know who they are calling. Everybody is just talking to everybody, the people they have outside. Then someone drafts a statement, and then someone else is tweeting. Then a surrogate, somebody who is affiliated to the government, or you call one of your people and say, please go on television. And then the principal is angry. The lawyer wants a threat included. Everything is messy. Communications arrive in our climb, right? When from what I know, when policies are being drafted, when they are being implemented, when a strategy is being devised to quench any fire, they actually do not remember. They think of the political strategies, they think of everything. Then they now call the communications team to come and draft a statement, to come and quench the fire. Finally, everything they have done. They have sent somebody to TV, they've sent another one to radio station. Some people have been tweeting, some people are trending some hashtags, and everything keeps getting worse. That's when they remember that, oh, we actually have communications experts. So by the time the communications teams arrive, they discover that there are 5 different versions of the same story that are already circulating from either the same organization or from different angles of the same organization. So it could be the truth, but there is no unified story. There is no unified narrative. You cannot have 5 different versions of the same story going out. You are confusing people, and then you let people realize that there is no synergy. Yes, there are times that you need to quickly respond to matter. There are times that you need to put the right information out there. However, in addition to the speed and the accuracy of information, the command structure has to be adhered to. Judgment, which one goes out? How does it go out? That matter even more. Yes, please, next slide. Here on the next slide, we have the 9-step grid. The 9-step grid. Yeah. So this is a practical crisis response framework. It doesn't always follow like this, sequentially, but this is what it should be ideally. You have to have the facts. Before speaking, you must establish what the fact is. This is what we know. This is that's the fact. And the risk is, what damage can this do? This has happened. It's the fact. So what damage can it do? Who matters the most right now? Right now, in the scheme of things, who do we want to target with our message? That's the audience. And this audience, this very critical stakeholder, what exactly should they know? And how much of this should they know? The messenger. Who do we send? Who should say it? The channel. Where? Of course. Should it be on social digital space? Should it be first TV? Should we have a press conference? Then the timing. When? Then we must monitor. How is the response? This response that we have thrown out, how is it landing? Is it landing how it should? Then we adapt. If something is not landing well, we need to adapt it. What do we do? However, I need to stress here that the very first response does not need to answer every question. Sometimes it is as simple as, yes, this happened. We are aware that it has happened. Right now, these are the steps being taken. We shall come back to you with more details. If possible, give a timeline when you'll come back with more details. Like I said, this doesn't necessarily have to follow all the 9 steps, because sometimes you have to keep adapting, right? You can adapt the audience, or no, you can adapt from the message, because if you read the message, if it's not covering the basis with the audience that is the most critical, you must adapt, because even if to you are not convinced that the audience will buy that message with the crisis management model you have adopted. There is the crisis clock. There is the crisis clock. Moderator. Next slide, moderator.
It's coming up now.
Okay. The crisis clock is also known as the golden hour. And yes, it's up now. It's up now. Thank you. Like I said, the crisis clock is also known as the golden hour, which is the first 60 minutes in the life of a crisis. The purpose of this first 60 minutes, the first hour, isn't necessarily to win opposition arguments or to win critics. It is to, one, within the first minute to the 10th minute, you need to do situational awareness. You need to establish command. You need to establish message discipline and stakeholder priorities. That's what you do within the first 60 minutes. 0 to 10 minutes, you verify facts. You activate a crisis lead. For instance, the Sultan of Sokoto has said something. You don't want to have a lead who is a Christian, who would say something that might be interpreted in our crime as being disrespectful to the Sultan and ultimately degenerates the situation from the actual crisis to a religious polarizing crisis. So you activate the crisis lead and free space. That is the ideal thing. Within the next phase, that's the 10 to 20 minutes, you quickly do your stakeholder mapping and the risks that they bring. And then you decide the escalation level. At this point, you establish message and response architecture. You look at your questions and answer and holding time. You prepare all manner of curveballs and then curveball questions and what might come up. You prepare all those within the 10 to 20 minutes. 20 to 40 minutes, you are supposed to have messenger approval, and the sequence of the message. Like I said initially in one of the earlier slides, that the first response doesn't necessarily have to respond to everything. So you might have message sequences and even messenger sequences. Which message goes first? Which messenger goes first? If it is not enough, then you release the next batch. You have to brief internal stakeholders before external release. And I've seen this happen many times where even internal stakeholders are learning of crisis going on within their organization from an external messenger, that a surrogate that is on TV saying something about the organization, where sometimes, to make matters worse, where they are supposed to be part of the part of the communications team, or maybe even the spokesperson. So you must ensure that the internal stakeholders have been briefed, because while someone is on air, while someone is sending out a message or tweeting on your behalf, a media house can be calling your internal people and asking questions, and they can read from the cue, they can read from postures, they can read from body language that this person is clueless, and they can run with another story, another potential crisis, that this house is in so much disarray that people within the organization do not even know what is happening. What kind of government is this person leading? 40 to 60 minutes. That's the final quadrant of the golden hour. You publish where necessary. You engage priority media and other stakeholders. You monitor reaction, and then you adapt. That at this point, this is when you use all the lessons or all the steps in the 9-step grid. You adapt where necessary. You correct errors, or sometimes you simply know what to not respond to. It is at 40 to 60 minutes. And always remember, fast is good. Fast is very good. However, fast must be good, because wrong and fast is just another faster disaster. It's another crisis entirely, and it could even be worse than the initial crisis. Now we have the digital space. Next slide, please, moderator. Okay, sorry. Failure models. What usually makes a political crisis worse? One of the first things, and it is very classic, is that usually government officials will deny first before verifying. They have not verified. And that's what usually happens when what I have spoken about in the previous slide happens. When internal stakeholders do not have a debrief of what's going on, what crisis is unfolding, and what crisis needs to be managed and curtailed. So they don't know, they are clueless, they are oblivious, and they are out there denying, oh, this is not happening. It's happening very fast and very, very well. So it makes it worse. And then when you allow several officials to give different versions, it's usually a calamity. One person, Daniel Boala, is saying this. Someone else is saying that, it's calamitous. Then attacking the message when the evidence is still unclear. You are not sure of what the evidence is. Somebody said that there's been a bribe or classic case that is still unfolding. I know that some of us have moved on, but the case is still very alive. The alleged fictitious federal government, a presidential agency, and then you are attacking the messenger. But the evidence is unclear. We don't know what the evidence is, but supporters are already attacking the messenger. It could be true that the messenger lacks credibility. It could be true that he is actually all what is not good, or the criteria that a supposed whistleblower should have. He doesn't have it. However, what does the evidence say? So don't attack the messenger until the evidence is clear. Then using legal language. Using legal language when what the public needs is just to understand. They just want to be able to understand. And then you send a lawyer to that point because the people don't understand and they're agitated and they need communication. You're not communicating when people don't get the essence of what you're saying. Then you send a lawyer to go and give them more legal jargon. It can make the situation very worse. Going silent without a deliberate reason. You have not said anything. We saw it. I mentioned that it happened with NSAS. Silence should never, ever be an option. It should not be a strategy. However, there are times that silence can be strategic. Silence can be strategic. Remember when I said that you can come out and say, we are aware that this is happening. We do not have all the facts. We are investigating and we will come back. You really haven't said much. You really haven't said much. What you have not done is the absent. So silence can be strategic. You have not given out any information, basically. You have not said what exactly the situation is. You have not said what you are doing about investigation. You have not said how long is the investigation going to take. You really have not said. So you are silent on the critical issues, but you are not absent. So silence can be strategic where absence can be disastrous. Absence will be seen as you not caring, you not being in tune, and you not being interested in finding a solution to the problem at hand. Then confusing virality with public opinion or dismissing virality as irrelevant. Sometimes saying nothing, sometimes that the fact that something is going viral doesn't mean that it is the entire Nigeria that is talking about it. There was something that, was it Lai Mohammed during the past administration? Was it our president, current president? I can't remember. I don't know for sure. That about 40 people tweeting in a room. He said something about just a few people tweeting in a room, and then they confuse it with, oh, the whole Nigeria has said this. Whoever the person was that said it is correct. Sometimes you can have people actually tweeting and engaging the table, and then they are on top of the table, and then they catch the attention of certain influencers that may be paid or not paid, and they are interested in the topic, and they tweet to a very massive audience, and it continues going, and it goes viral. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is public opinion. At the same time, saying that after all, it is 40 people that are tweeting in a room, therefore, whatever they are saying is irrelevant, also can make a political crisis worse, either of the two. Next slide, please.
It's up already.
Now we are in the digital tech era, and the digital battle. Yes, I can see. Thank you. The digital battlefield has changed the clock entirely, such that the rules
So, hello everyone. So I think our facilitator is off the call. Let's just wait a bit to have our connect back. Thank you. So while we're waiting for our facilitator, I mean, you could just probably share a few things you have been able to learn from the conversation so far in the chat box. Go ahead and share your thoughts and insights in the chat box while we wait for our facilitator to join the call back. Thank you. Facilitator. Right. For 20, I'm still waiting for.
I don't know what happened, but I lost.
Welcome back, Ma.
Thank you. I'm very sorry. I lost connection for a bit.
No problem, Ma.
Okay, so I was saying that we know about the digital clock, 60 minutes, the golden hour. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. However, because of the digital space, the battlefield has changed the clock entirely. Thank you very much, Nathaniel. A citizen that has a phone and data can become the first broadcaster. He just broadcasts it, and then he doesn't give you time to look at your first 0 to 10 minutes, whatever. And then screenshots that things that you have said 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they make yesterday's statements almost permanent. Algorithms reward emotion. People are angry, they are naive, conflict is what sells. Therefore, the algorithm will keep pushing, all those narratives that are emotive, that are contentious, and that are controversial. And so they won't wait for institutional convenience. AI has lowered the cost of producing convincing false or manipulated content. I'm going to use an example. Just a few weeks ago, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, a video trended online. In that video, Annie Macaulay, the ex-wife of Two-Face Idibia, she was reading an excerpt from a book, obviously. However, there was a text that was on display on the video. You would need to listen to the video to hear what she was saying, right? But then you could see the text, and the text was totally different. The text that followed, that accompanied the video, was that she was sorry for leaving Two-Face, and it was her friends that made her, she wished she did not listen to her friends. And it went viral, and a whole lot of people fell for it. All they needed to have done was to click and listen, because what she was saying was totally at variance with what the narrative was. But people didn't listen. And it happens in politics, and it's going to happen a whole lot more during this political season, during the campaign season leading to 2027 election. And all sides are going to be guilty, because AI just makes it very easy to produce very convincing content that is either totally false or slightly true but heavily manipulated. The response system must therefore be faster, always faster than it should be, but never reckless. It's better to delay a statement or a response than to respond and make a crisis even worse. In those days, please go back to digital. In those days, communication used to be, the hierarchy used to be that government will release a statement to the media, and then the media will work on it and release it to the public. However, now, even government doesn't have time to do it before everybody just does it and sends it to everybody. So everybody is now part of the communication hierarchy. The hierarchy has been dislodged. It has collapsed totally. We have deep fakes, we have manipulated audios, we have fake documents. Do not call everything fake news merely because it does not align with your bias. It destroys credibility when something genuinely fake appears. You know the story about the boy who cried wolf. Slide 16, please. Now we are going to do a very short exercise, and it's on the screen. What we have on the screen is placing you as the communications team to Madam President. And you woke up, you've prepared, you check your time, is 8:15, and all of a sudden, there is a damaging allegation against your principal, Madam Petra, that is trending. Madam Petra is Madam President. People who knows. And by 9 a.m., major political organizations are calling you. Some of them are actually now even lifting from Twitter, from it's X now, from X, from Facebook, from wherever, and they are actually now running with that story. Supporters are fighting. How dare they? They are fighting. They are online fighting. And Madam President, who is your principal, wants to attack the person, says, give me my phone. Who is this person that says, is this not this person that came to try to borrow money that day? I gave the person money and he never returned. He ran away. This person is accused. I'm going to attack this person on X. You are the communications team. What do you do in the next first 60 minutes and what do you not do? We have 5 minutes or less, 2 minutes for this exercise. Okay, you ate into my time, moderator. We waited for 5 minutes, then you read the profile for another how many minutes? So we have 5 minutes for this exercise, please.
All right. So if you want
anyone,
to
yes, anyone who wants. Sorry, yeah. Anyone to bail us out?
Yes. You can speak today. We have 2 persons already.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I'll do is make sure that I try as much as possible to stop any retaliation. And I would advise my principal against, going on a personal attack. And then you have to, at first instance, think about a strategy, then do some serious fact checking. And then, if it's possible, try as much, at first instance, maybe your principal might be upset, but try as much as possible for the principal not to go on social media, radio, or television. And then, if it's possible, try and say that all media inquiries should come to a certain point. And then try as much as possible to get the facts. And then try as much as possible to see how what you're doing to mitigate the circumstances. But don't ignore the media. Don't gaslight them, and don't engage in any feud, that might come electronically, or online. So it's very important that you have to be very careful. But just be careful. Just try as much as possible. Say it's something we're dealing with, and maybe when the true facts then emerge, then you can come to them and say, this is what we have established. And then talk about the positive things. So that's where, what do you call it, damage limitation that your principal is doing or has been involved in.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Tunde, any other contribution?
Yes, we have 2 more.
Okay.
Irene.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Absolutely,
Yes,
Irene. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Please permit my camera to be off. I'm in a very crowded environment. So
Sure.
the first thing I would do is to, I would kind of like activate a response team. I would kind of like activate a crisis response team to ensure that nobody else responds to these like what the allegations that is going on. I would have a one-way response so that people don't go around spreading different things. I would take screenshots of what was initially said before it is edited or anything, and then call the principal to confirm if is this information true or not. So having taken the screenshots, having confirmed whether I should deny or maybe stall, right, within the first few minutes of the prices escalating, I would just like notify my entire team not to respond first until we have confirmed is this thing true or is not true. But what I will not do is like instantly start attacking what the other person said without having a concrete reason or a concrete answer from the principal or other stakeholders involved. So I think that's what I would do in the first 60 minutes and what I wouldn't do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene.
All right. So Esther.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, please.
Okay, so in the first 60 minutes, I will first tell my principal that it is not wisdom to respond online. And I have learned from a bit of experience that whatever you do in the heat of the moment might be more problematic. It means that even if you want to respond, people might think you just want to form a defense mechanism. So you want to be sure whatever you want to respond with is proper facts. And of course, that is after you have asked your principal what is really the true state of things. And one other thing I have learned again is that sometimes it is wisdom to not even respond. So, whatever conversation you're going to have with your principal is going to inform your decision and choice of what would I say, the next turn of events, whether it is wisdom to respond or it is wisdom to just ignore. One thing I know is that sometimes while there's heat in the moment, it will die down. So you decide, is it something that can wear off like that, or is something that must be addressed? And of course, like I said, you must respond with facts. So yes, within the first 60 minutes, not stop any response that is going to be to come off defensive, and look towards just providing facts if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tunde, Irene, and Esther, you have all spoken really well. I know that there are some messages in the chat box. We'll get to those later. All of you have spoken really well, like I said, and somebody took us, or almost all of you took us back to the step. Now, sometimes some of the allegations might be true. That's why we are establishing the facts. And there could be evidence that might be damaging. And at this point, who is the most critical audience? Don't forget the step 3 is to look at your stakeholder management. The most critical person at that point is your principal who wants to go and fight on Twitter. So at that point, you have to look at try to calm him down, try to make him see, him or her see. Don't forget also that at that level, depending on who the principal is, but if it is at the level of governor, president, they have a lot of ego, right? So you must be able to make them see that it is not, they are bigger than going on X. So once they know that they are bigger than that, then that settles it. Then somebody said that sometimes it is wisdom to not speak. One of the times it will be wisdom to not speak is when you have not established the fact. Because if you go and say it is a lie and the video now comes out that proves that the allegation is true, that's egg on your face. So you stall, wait, establish the facts. And that is where it is not in my slide. That is where the issue of gatekeepers and intelligence gathering comes to fore. You must have gatekeepers. If you are managing, you are in communications team that manages a politically exposed person, you must have gatekeepers in major media organizations. You must have gatekeepers amongst political influencers, people who have their ears to the ground, amongst bloggers, people who they will get information and you should be their first point of call. This thing is coming, or this thing is coming, and then you know how to prepare for it. Oh, what do they have? They actually say they have pictures, they have videos, and there's no way if I don't release them, it will be as if I've been compromised. But this is what it says. So they help you prepare beforehand. And some, you really can't defend some things. What you do is throw them a bone somewhere. Create, even if it doesn't make sense, just make sure that some people are talking about it. They say that the news cycle is usually 48 hours, maximum 72 hours. There are some that die down within 12 hours. So whilst you may not be able to do much about that particular situation, make them forget, take their interest elsewhere. And before you know it, you have surmounted that crisis. Are we together?
Yes,
So
we are.
now we have debriefed the simulation. We must establish the fact and then know what is a legal exposure. Is it coalition? Is this safety? the audience who needs reassurance, your principal, the people who need explanation, who needs evidence, or who needs direct engagement. What response are we giving? Are we rebutting? Are we clarifying? Are we acknowledging? Are we throwing them round another curve? The voice, if we are responding, who is going to be the voice? Do we set a ring light for the principal himself to come on air and speak? Do we get the spokesperson to speak? Is it an entire institution that needs to speak? Is it a third party that should speak? Is it an expert in the field, or should it be no one? Then at the end of the day, this has happened. We have either responded or we have deflected. What do we do afterwards? There has that the immediate fire is contained. That is very, very, very important. And always we must ensure that the internal stakeholders are always on the same page. And to our next page, for the closing. As we round up, I think that if there is nothing that we are leaving with after 1 hour, 5 things here that I have listed, you may have different things you want to leave with, but I think that these 5 things from what I have put together is that, number 1, communication is part of strategy, not the decoration. I've said this earlier. It's like when people try to plan an event, they rent the hall, they do everything. And then lastly, dying minutes, they are looking for a photographer. And sometimes they're not even looking for a photographer, they want to pay. They are looking for a photographer that they can just help them and they will find them something. Photography should be a part of your event. Same way, communication is part of strategy. It is not political strategy, economic strategy, whatever kind of strategy. As you are formulating a policy, communication is a part of that strategy, because the communication team is going to be looking at it and be looking at it from the lens of the public, the lens of opposition. What are the things that I am in this room, I am a part of you, but I am sitting here as opposition, I'm sitting here as the devil's advocate. What are those things, if I was in opposition and I was not a part of this government, that I would fight this policy for? And so as I'm there looking at those loopholes and bringing them out from the basis of the opposition, and then I help the strategy team to firm up there would always be questions, but at least cover all bases. Perception matters, but credibility is the asset that sustains perception. So yes, the optics are important, perception is important. However, there should always be performance. Narratives are built over time. Narratives are built over time. Crises merely expose how strong they are, of course. In crisis, command the process before trying to command the conversation. Always ensure that you've debriefed your internal stakeholders, you know who your audience is, you know what the message is going to be. Ensure that the entire process is in shape before you try to think of the conversation that you are going to have. No communication strategy can permanently compensate for poor governance, poor performance. And know that perception, credibility is accumulated before crisis, so that people can give you benefit of the doubt. A government, politician, or institution that has consistently communicated truthfully possesses what we call credibility reserve, so that when once in a while you fall off the wagon, the media, the public, even sometimes the reasonable opposition is willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, or willing to not flog you so hard. And so when crisis comes, people are willing to wait for explanation. But if you have spent years misleading people, even perfectly curated or even accurate crisis statements will still or may still not be believed. That is why crisis management usually begins even before crisis. And lastly, this is supposed to be a discussion, but we are far behind time. In political communication, what is more dangerous? Is it a bad decision or a bad explanation? Of course, it could be both. It could be both, because sometimes a bad decision that is well explained sometimes might help you redeem the bad decision. You've made a bad decision. If you explain it well, you can come back home and quickly redo the bad decision. But sometimes a bad explanation can make even a good decision worse. So sometimes it is one, sometimes it is both. And that is how prices earned over time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your attention and for your participation over the course of 1 hour plus. I sincerely appreciate. If you have questions, I am available to take them now. And if you have any feedback, please, I'm willing to take notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma. It has truly been an insightful conversation for the past 1 hour. Core 20, can we celebrate and appreciate our facilitator for this evening? Thank you so much, Ma. So we'll go straight into the questions. All right, so we have about 3 people hands raised right now. So Mr. Tunde, you're muted. Please also try to keep your questions short and concise.
Yeah, thanks for this. So very quickly, my question is this, is if the crisis is absolutely massive to the extent that that 0 to 60 minutes, it's massive. Say it's affected, maybe it's been a fire or it's been a neglect by maybe a political machine or something's gone wrong and it's affected so many people and it's a disaster. You most likely might not have the facts immediately within those 60 minutes. How would you deal with that? It's not that you don't deal with the press, but you just want to at least maybe get everything done very quickly. Sorry, get the facts before you start speaking to people. So where does the 0 to 60 minutes come into play there? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Tunde. Like I did say during my presentation, that step is not cast in stone. There are times that you need to be seen to be present. There are times, that was why I said that you are saying something, but you have not really said anything. You want to calm nerves. You want to show that you have heard the people. So you come out and you say that, yes, there's been an allegation. You are neither confirming or, denying. There's been an allegation. You are investigating. You will come back with facts. No matter what happens, it's going to dissuade a number of people from, going the next step. It's when there is absolute silence, when nobody seems to be saying anything. That is when people get even more angered. Like it seems these people are not listening. It means we might need to do something else to get their attention. So when such happens, whilst you are trying to establish the facts quickly, you need to be able to read situations. You need to be able to know what kind of situations will escalate. However, also bear in mind that everything does not begin and end with the communications department or the communications team. Sometimes you are a professional, you know what you're doing, you understand crisis management, you understand perception management, but your principal does not understand. Your principal thinks, who the hell are these people? Don't they know that we can pour the army out immediately? Pour them out. Anybody that does not go back into their house, deal with them. And of course, you know that that's going to escalate. That problem is going to escalate. But sometimes you are as powerful as your principal makes your office. You are as powerful as your principal thinks your professional opinion is valuable. So it may be out of your hand. You may know everything to do to de-escalate a situation, and you might even be working on that. But your principal, especially in Nigeria, most politicians want to look tough. So when you want to give the reasonable advice, they say that makes them look weak, they might not buy it. So yes, you have to bear in mind that it's not totally in your hands, and that sometimes the golden hour rule doesn't always follow, and it might not even be approved. You might even be sanctioned for following that step.
Thank you. Yeah. So, and just also at times they have to go to the chief executive. I mean, I've been a communications manager myself, whereby they don't want, it has to be the chief executive who comes online to talk.
Absolutely.
Yep. So at times maybe it's not always the comms person that.
Yes.
No. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I agree.
okay.
I think it was in one of the slides.
All right, thank you very much. Olatunji.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful class. My question also has to do with that question you raised. And now I am looking at it. What if that damaging report, in a way, is confirmed to be true? Your principal eventually confirmed that it was true. How do you think the spokesperson can actually manage such a situation? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Olatunji. I think that somehow I did say it. I don't think that it makes any sense, depending on what the allegation is. You don't come out to own an allegation on behalf of your principal, except the principal wants to own it himself, and then he gives you authorization, which is highly impossible. So I did say that sometimes you don't say anything at all regarding that. Surrogates are there, and that's when I talked about in 48 hours it will fizzle out, in 12 hours it will fizzle out. And I did say that one strategy that can be deployed is that you can create a distraction. So if 50 people voices were talking about the allegation, create a distraction that reduces the 50 voices to say 20, and then somehow, if possible, you get another distraction, and then the remaining like that. So just if you can create one distraction or 20 distractions to whittle down the impact and the import of the report, because it depends on how damaging it is. And if it is verified to be true, it's not something that as a spokesperson you can go to the public, because don't forget, you have to also assess the risk. That's part of the grid. You assess the risk. How potentially impactful can this be? What are the consequences of the impact of this? So sometimes you don't deny, you don't affirm, you don't apologize, you don't rebut, you throw out distractions out there and dismiss everything.
Thank you very much, Ma. By Elvis.
Yes, good evening, ma. Thank you for the class. I have a simple question. What do you do when either you are the spokesperson or you're from an organization where you know that people are being cheated or being harassed, mismanaged, or tortured? Then a public figure like, let's say, an humanitarian advocate or an activist bring it out on media. What do you do? How do you respond to it when it comes to, like, maybe when people are demanding for accountability, when people are demanding for justice and all of those things? What do you do immediately at that point? In the sense that maybe in a department where people are paid salaries, so their salaries are deducted, when they ask for accountability, the organization needs to respond and the organization does not respond. What do you do as a public figure?
Okay, so I need to state here that you are a spokesperson. You are not an activist. That's where the problem usually happens, when activists become spokespeople and there is a crisis of conscience. You are a decent person and you see things happening, there is a crisis of conscience. And that's where due diligence should happen before you even take up the role of a spokesperson in an organization. Except you're saying that it was after you got into the organization that they started this behavior. Maybe there is a new corrupt boss at the helm of affairs, and then he just allows anything to happen. You read his body language. You don't have to also defend everything. You do not have to defend everything. Sometimes you allow the organization itself to defend itself. I suppose, I am not sure, I suspect that that's what happened with NSAS. Nobody was willing to come out to defend the SARS. At some point, even when the crisis eventually engulfed the country, it was the civil military relations department of the Nigerian army that eventually came out to come and keep the peace, try to calm people down. They were on the streets doing stuff and doing public relations and human relations with the public. If the the police organization, they had a spokesperson who never, I'm not sure that they really ever did anything about these complaints, right? All that needed to be done, as you, a communications person, if you know that, of course, it's not easy to quit, it's not easy to resign, it's also not easy to throw your organization under the bus. One thing that I think can be helpful is to either convince your boss personally or convince somebody that he listens to. Every boss has somebody they listen to. Find a way to get to the person that they listen to say, you know what, how about set up a panel? Sometimes they set up these kangaroo panels. They may not have the good intent. They don't even have the intent of following anything up, but set it up. And then you as a spokesperson can now come out, because you also have an image yourself. You have a personal image to protect. So come out and now say that, okay, these complaints have been received, and the commission or the agency or the ministry is looking into it, and whatever happens, right? But then when you now have a crisis of conscience, at the end of the day, nobody can advise you on what to do. You have to know what to do regarding that, because at that point, it becomes a very personal obligation and responsibility.
All right, thank you so much, Marv, for that. All right, Victoria.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Thanks for that. I wanted to ask a question regarding you talking about some bosses being tough, or maybe stakeholders being tough. I want to ask, in the case like let me use like the president or the governor, things happen in the state, and I don't know if it is the gap or maybe strategic move that something will happen in a state. People will be expecting to hear something from the governor or from the president itself, like the killing in Jos. People, after some days or weeks that the president went there to another place that they sent some people, and people were angry about that kind of act. In Oyo State, when they had the NSAS, the governor came out, even moving to the street, talking to people, and we didn't really feel it that much in the state. So I don't know, is it an issue that it is the communication team, or who are those that usually make it that we will represent the stakeholders should not come out? Is it an individual issue, lapses, or being tough, as you said? Because I try to find out what do make it that at times our stakeholders doesn't really come out, the sent representative. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Again, the personality of the chief executive is also reflected in the style. I wrote one time that one of the most difficult jobs to hold, one of the most difficult roles to hold in public space is that of a spokesperson, because sometimes what you are saying, even you yourself, you do not believe it, because it does not align with what you think should happen. But that's what the principal has said should happen. And you go out there, you speak, and they want you, especially when you are very opposed to it, they can say it's you that will speak. You go there, you are speaking over something that you do not personally align with, or you write a statement and you append your name to something you do not align with. And then sometimes facts that are available to chief executives like governors and presidents are not the same as what the public runs with. Sometimes the public gets manipulated information. And if they release the right information, especially when it has to do with security, then it can just add, fuel to the fire. And to make it, to ensure that the polity is not overheated, they simply ignore. Now, when you have some chief executives that go out, usually when you use the case of Oyo State, for instance, Oyo State was in the opposition at the time of the NSAS. So don't forget that every politician tries to score points, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So if the federal government is in a ruling, is in a party different from a state government, and there is a crisis, the state governor can try to score points from that, doing things that the president or other governors in the same party as the president are not doing. So they can try to score political points by doing something totally different, something that resonates with the people. But at the same time, it is not. I think the main question you have asked is it the communications people that say, president, go out? Sometimes the communications team can say, president, the communications they advise. And like I said, it is not always that the advice are taken. Sometimes someone who does not even understand what communication is, what perception is, what trust and legitimacy are the people who will say, you better don't mind them. They want you to go on TV and be explaining what, or telling them that they should not be angry. They should be angry. What will happen if they are angry? Will they come and chase you out of Aso Rock? And the president or the governor might actually believe. So it depends on all. Don't forget that these people are humans, and at the more powerful you are, the more whisperers you have. This person is whispering this thing, that person is whispering that thing. So it depends on what they want to listen to. Communications don't necessarily dictate how these things, ordinarily they should, but even not just Nigeria, look at US, even with Trump, you will see that it's what they want, it's the optics they want to paint. And if it doesn't, what you are telling them does not align with how they want to be perceived, then there's nothing you can do about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Ma. All right. So I think that's all the question for this session. I want to say thank you. Truly, it's been an amazing 1 hour, 46 minutes of conversation, and Electoral College Court 20. Can we celebrate our facilitator? Thank you so much for taking our time to share your insight and also answering our questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Electoral College Court 19, sorry, Court 20, please go to the chat box and celebrate our facilitator for this evening. All right. Thank you so much, Ma.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So our students of that Quad 20, classes continues tomorrow. Please ensure that you are also available and present. We are ending to the end of the cohort. Please ensure that you also invite other people in your party and also in your group to be available for tomorrow and Sunday's class. All right. So thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
you
I
all
think,
very much.
all right,
Enjoy
thank
the
you
rest
so,
of your evening.
yes, thank you so much. So that will be all for today. See you guys tomorrow.